Right.
The webcast is ready, Chairman.
Okay, we will begin. Good evening, everyone. I am Councillor Denise Joy, Chair of the Licensing Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this remote meeting of the committee. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel, and this will include instant messaging. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? Take quiet as a no. And I ask that so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. My role as the chairman will continue. However, the responsibility for managing the meeting has been temporarily assigned to the Democratic Services Officer, Ms. Parfitt. This officer will not steer the debate. They will merely assist in implementing the remote meeting protocols, produce the minutes and provide procedural advice as required. Members are reminded that instant messaging will be visible to all those viewing the meeting and must only be used by members to indicate their wish to speak. I will now ask the clerk to take the attendance register by reading out the list of committee members who will confirm their attendance by answering present. Ms. Parfitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members. Apologies have been received from Councillor Brindle, and I should have Councillor Pell present as substitute.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fissenden. Councillor Fort.
Present.
Councillor Garton.
Good evening, present, yep.
Councillor Mrs. Grigg. Councillor Hinder.
Present.
Councillor Joy.
Present.
Councillor Nagy.
Present.
Councillor Newton.
I'm present.
Councillor Mrs. Robertson.
Present.
Councillor M. Rose.
Present.
Councillor J. Sams.
Present.
Councillor Springett.
Present.
And I believe Councillor Mrs. Grigg has joined us.
Yes, present. Sorry, I had trouble logging on today.
No problem. And I will just check that Councillor Fissenden is here. No, in which case, Chairman, the attendance has concluded. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now ask the Democratic Services Officer to read out the list of officers present and which items they will be presenting. Olivia.
Thank you. So we have the Senior Licensing Officer, Lorraine Neal, for items 12 and 13, the Head of Housing and Community Services, John Littlemore, for item 14, Legal Representative, Robin Harris, the Head of Licensing Shared Service, Sharon Bambra, and myself, Olivia Parfitt, as clerk.
Thank you. Great. Welcome, everybody. And we will start. We've done the apologies, and I will just say we hope that Anne and her husband are a lot better than they were, and I hear that they're hoping to be home tomorrow, so we keep our fingers crossed and pray for them as well.
Are we going to do visiting members?
I'm just coming down to that. If you can bear with me just a minute, Malcolm. We have Councillor Pearl present as a substitute member for Councillor Brindle. And I'm now on item 3, which is urgent items. Whilst not an urgent item, item 14 will be taken before item 12 prior to us conducting the business of the committee. If there is no dissent, I will assume this is agreed by members. Therefore, that will be agreed. Now I'm going on to item 4. Do we have any visiting members?
My apologies, I was a bit premature.
I know, but it's nice to know you're there, Malcolm.
No items to speak on.
Thank you very much. Is that no one else? No. Great, thank you.
Is that number 5?
Sorry?
I got visiting members number 5.
Have you?
Yeah, disclosures by members and officers was number 4.
Well, I might say a different number to you because I've got 2 sheets in front of me. But hopefully, if we can keep to the order, we'll have a reasonable meeting. So, yeah, the number might be different, but I'm definitely on visiting members. Okay. So we'll move on. Disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members and officers? The clerk will ask members of the committee if they have any disclosures, but if I hear nothing, I'm assuming that we haven't. So is there anyone that has any disclosures? Take that as none. Thank you. And I'm looking at both now. We're back to item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. There are no Part 2 papers, so I intend to talk on all items in public. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Great.
Agreed.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can just clarify, my apologies. I note that there was no disclosures by members and officers, but if I could go through the list of members for disclosures of lobbying. Please.
Perfect. Yes, quite happy for that. Olivia, would you like to do that now?
Please.
Thank you.
So Councillor Fissenden is absent. Councillor Fort.
None.
Councillor Garton.
Sorry, none, no.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Grigg.
None.
Councillor Hinder.
None.
Councillor Joy.
None.
Councillor Nagy.
None.
Councillor Newton.
None.
Councillor Pearl.
None.
Councillor Mrs. Robertson.
None.
Councillor Emrose.
None.
And Councillor Sams.
None.
And Councillor Springett.
None.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're now going on to item 8, minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of November, pages 1 to 3. Page 1, page 2, and page 3. Move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of November 2020 be agreed as a correct record. If everyone agrees, I will take your silence that you are in agreement.
Okay.
And it sounds like they are, Olivia, and they will be signed at a later date. Moving on to item 9. Minutes of the Licensing Act 2003 Subcommittee meeting held on the 3rd of December, which is on page 4 to 7. Do we want to go through those pages, or I think they are correct only to those that were there. So
I would say that I agree.
Thank you. So I move that the minutes of the subcommittee meeting held on the 3rd of December 2020 be agreed as a correct record. And those minutes will be signed at a later date as well. Thank you. Item 10, questions and answer session from members of the public. There are no questions from members of the public this evening. Item 11, questions from members to the chairman. There are no questions from members. And we move on to item 14. Now, have I got that right? Bear with me. Yes. No, I haven't. I've jumped now.
Madam Chair, you were right. It was item 14 to be taken first.
The ones for taking. Yes. So can we look at item 14, which is on page 38 to 42? Mr. Littlemore.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall that at previous meetings we've discussed the training requirements of the licensing committee so that we can be in compliance with the council's constitution. The final task that we had to do was for the committee to agree the training package for the forthcoming year. So this report sets that out for you. It's been compiled in conjunction with Mr. Harris from Mid-Kent Legal Services. And he is here tonight if you have any technical questions about the composition of the package. Madam Chairman, in addition to the recommendation that is on the report, what I should have added as well is to request that the committee agrees the date for completion of the training for this year. So, Madam Chairman, if I can ask you to do that once members have agreed the training package itself. I'd be grateful. Thank you.
I'll bring you back in. Okay, thank you. So, members, are there any questions for Mr. Littlemore or Mr. Harris on the training package? I take your quiet as there's nothing anyone wishes to. Patrick, Councillor Garton.
Yeah, just for confirmation, the training as suggested here, I believe it is just an online briefing session. So basically what we used to do in the town hall, but do it online now. So there won't be anything like the question and answer session like we had thrust upon us earlier last year. Is that correct?
Who would like to respond to that one? Mr. Littlemore or?
Could I pass over to Mr. Harris, please?
Mr. Harris, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What I would say about it is that I think actually it would be preferable if it were at all possible to run this as face-to-face training. And obviously that depends on where we are at in relation to the pandemic. But having said that, so it could be done online and it then wouldn't be dealt with by way of a knowledge check as the previous one was, which was done at rather short notice. It would be done by way of moderating or monitoring the interaction of members undertaking the training. But as anyone who's done lengthy training sessions on virtual means will know that it's rather painful to do it that way, and it would be preferable to do it face to face. And so in relation to setting the timetable, it might be appropriate to set the timetable for completion to later in the year, which makes completing the training face-to-face much more likely.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Okay, Councillor Garton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one?
Just a minute, I've got Councillor Grigg next, then I'll have Councillor Councillor Grigg.
I should put my name down.
Councillor Grigg.
Yeah, sorry about that. My
right.
stupid phone went at the same time. I think sort of Patrick Garton is sort of getting to the same thing as I am, and I think Robin sort of answered it as well. The thought of doing sort of hours of virtual training fills me with some kind of dread, because it's extremely hard. It's good when you're in the town hall and you can interact with each other, but actually when you're just sitting looking at a screen, I think it's going to be very hard to stay concentrated and engaged for that length of time. So that does worry me, Madam Chairman, and I would definitely like to go for the later date in order for us to try and get this face-to-face if we can. That's the first thing. And just the other thing is, could I just have some clarity on the actual list of the sessions that we're doing? So where it's got sort of short sessions, full day sessions for, say, street trading, 25 minutes short session, 45 minutes full day session. Is that 2 sessions that we'd have to do? Have I misunderstood that? I don't understand what the difference is between the short and the full. Is that 2 sessions that we'd have to undergo?
Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Chair. So in actual fact, the idea is that the whole training package can be delivered in either half a day or in a whole day, and naturally there is more information and more interaction in relation to the whole day's training. Again, in particular, if it was going to be done virtually, I think you probably would actually have to break it up into a series of smaller packages. But no, you don't do the 25-minute session and the 45-minute session. You do either the 25-minute session as part of a half day's training or a 45-minute session as part of a whole day's training.
But what is our legal requirement in order to satisfy our training guidelines? Is it because obviously I think you're going to go for a short session, but will that satisfy our guidelines enough that we would be able to sit on a street trading item after that?
So it's a constitutional requirement that you have training. And in relation to that, the reason why we're having the conversation or the debate this evening is to determine, the extent of the training and when that training should take place. But in effect, as long as you have had and attended the training, then that is deemed to be satisfactory.
That's wonderful. I just can reiterate, I think that 3.5 days or a full day virtual training is way too much, and I question how useful that will be, because I think it's going to be extremely hard for members to engage in virtual training for that length of time.
If I may, Madam Chairman, I think, as I say, in practical terms, I think is that in relation to this evening, if you're considering whether you would like a half-day training or a whole-day training, and when that training would take place, and seeing how long individual sessions would be within that training, is if it came to let's say the training was put back to, just to name a month, September, when we might hope that face-to-face training in the town hall would be possible, and that you had set aside a whole day of training, and we get to September, and deeply regrettably the pandemic is still in full effect and face-to-face training simply isn't possible within the rules, then we could look at it and say what was agreed was 6 sessions of that varied between sort of 40 minutes and an hour each, roughly. Do we actually attempt to deliver them virtually across one day, or do we attempt to deliver them virtually across 6 shorter sessions? And I think potentially having that flexibility, whether you actually need to put that in the recommendation or not, or whether or not that flexibility is implied by circumstances if we find we couldn't deliver the training the way we wanted to, I presume is actually in fact a matter for members to determine this evening.
Thank you very much. That's well explained. But for what it's worth, Madam Chairman, I would like to go for the flexibility.
Agreed. I'm with you as well on that.
Me too.
I have Councillor Nagy next.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I would just like to, whatever happens, if we have to do it on the sessions on the internet, if it could be reminded that I don't think I'm the only one that has to work. So if sessions could be late afternoon or early evening would be better for someone like myself. But if someone offers me, say we can have a whole day and get this all done in one hit, then if we have enough time, I could probably book that day in, and then we could get the whole thing done in if possible in one day. So if that could be bared in mind for someone like myself, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Nagy. I think in the past the officers have done a really great job in trying to help those councillors that can't fit in because of work and whatever. And I'm sure that sort of thing will happen again. Is that so, Mr. Harris? It can all be taken into account, yes?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Nagy. I'll have Councillor Hinder. Yes, Councillor Hinder.
Thank you. I would prefer face-to-face one, simply because one cannot legislate for things like power outages where you may be halfway through doing a virtual training session and then suddenly your computer or someone else's computer drops out, and the chaos then that would ensue. So I would prefer face-to-face. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the flexibility will be there for all these different things that possibly could arise. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this before I bring back Mr. Littlemore? No, I've got nothing else in my messaging. So Mr. Littlemore, would you like to come back before we vote on the recommendation as on the papers, please?
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you. The recommendation is to agree the package, so that's set out in 2.5. How that package is then delivered, whether it's in one whole session or over across a number of sessions, I think we have flexibility within that recommendation to do that. As I said earlier, the only thing that it would be critical is when it needs to be completed by. So whether that's the whole package completed by September, October, whenever, in one session or across 10 sessions, as long as it's completed by a certain date, then that's fine. So if I could just ask members to bear that in mind, so that whether we amend the recommendation or just add to it, just to say when it needs to be completed by, that would be great. Thank you.
So my personal view on this one is that if we're hoping for things to ever get back to any normality, I think the later we go for, the better. I don't know what others think, if anyone would like to come in on this.
Agreed.
Most people agreeing? Yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Sorry to cut across. The only thing members will need to bear in mind is, of course, is that we are limited at the moment in the number of members who can sit on these subcommittees and those appeal hearings. So, whilst I wouldn't want to try and put you off having a later date, it does put a greater onus on those members that have been trained up. So just bear that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good point, because I know it's not the easiest task for Miss Parfitt when she's ringing around trying to get people for subcommittees as well as our committee meetings. Right, I'm not quite sure how we go ahead with this without looking at a paper that's going to tell me how soon people need that training. So really, I'm looking for a bit of advice. Is it something? Yeah, sorry, come back. Sorry, are you wishing to speak, Councillor Nagy?
Yeah, I was just waiting. Obviously, there must be some dates that we have to get this by. I'm sure Mr. Luttermore would just confirm that.
Well, I don't have the attendance sheets in front of me at the moment. There was a difficulty with substitutes particularly, but that's not necessarily a matter around subcommittees. I think my preference would be that not to go beyond the end of September. Thank you.
Okay, well, I feel quite comfortable when saying the end of September, if other members are going to agree to that.
Agreed.
So shall I read out the recommendation? Good. I'll read out the recommendation because it does need to go to a vote. So the recommendation is on page 38. The Licensing Committee approves the training package contained within paragraph 2.5 of the report to be completed by the end of September 2021. That will suffice, will it, Mr. Littlemore?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. That would be perfect.
So, Olivia, would you like to take members' votes, please?
One small amendment. Could we put it in either as part of the resolution or certainly minuted that members stated a preference to have it face-to-face, if possible?
Either that way or add the word flexibility, which seemed to cover an awful lot, didn't it?
Yeah, but it's the preference rather than the flexibility.
Okay, well, I don't have a problem with that.
If I may, the officers have taken that on board, and I think the officers themselves would prefer to deliver the training face to face. So I don't think you need to add it to the recommendation. If the guidelines around COVID permit us to do that, then that will be the way the training will be delivered.
Agreed.
Thank you,
if I give that undertaking on behalf of Mr. Harris and the other Mid-Kent legal team,
cross your heart.
Of course, that's the way it will be delivered. So it would just be if the regulations do not permit us to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Littlemore. Right, I'm now going over to Ms. Parfitt.
Madam Chair, may I suggest if there's no dissent received, a vote isn't necessary, but it is your choice as chair.
Okay, so we'll just take silence as that everybody's agreeing. So we'll just give it a moment in case anybody wants to disagree. No, perfect. So that's everybody. Okay. Thank you. Right, we now go on to item 12, licence fees and charges on page 8 to 19. Mrs. Neal, that's over to you.
Good evening, Chair.
Evening.
The report asks members to agree the proposed licence fees and charges for the financial year 2021-22, and that will be subject to any consideration of any representations that may be received following the statutory consultation required in relation to taxi and private hire fees. As the report states, a robust review was undertaken in 2016, where every task and every action was scrutinised when calculating and setting the fees for each type of application. Since then, an inflationary increase has been applied, as there's been no significant changes in the process and actions or times taken in dealing with the application. However, it is envisaged that a thorough review will be undertaken when setting the 2022 23 fees and charges. The current rate of inflation at the retail price index is around 2.6, and the majority of the surrounding local authorities have applied a 2.5 increase to their fees, including our partners Sevenoaks and Tunbridge Wells. But in accordance with NBC's medium-term financial strategy, NBC have applied an overall 2% increase. Also, in relation to taxes, there is the introduction of a new fee, which was discussed briefly, which was discussed at November's committee when the taxi policy was before licensing committee, and that's the introduction of the equo test, which can be seen in the fees and charges table at £66. The report is recommending that members agree the proposed fees. However, the options are that you can decide to leave the fee levels as they are. You can improve the inflation increases as proposed, or you can require a fee higher than the cost of delivering the service. However, that's generally not likely. So the recommendation is that you agree them, and the options are that you don't agree them, you do agree them, or you set them somewhere different. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Neal. Do I have anyone that wishes to speak on this? And Malcolm, I know you said no, but as a visiting member, if you have something, I'd like to hear from you now.
That's very kind of you, Denise. But for once, I will keep my silence.
Thank you.
I know it's unusual, but
no, that's fine.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
thinking of me.
Right, going on to the committee, I've Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just thinking, with the way things are, I'd just like to know, other councils seem to have just put theirs up. So I think other councils have just put it up. And this is one of the charges that we just have to cover our expenses. I think that's right. And will we still cover our expenses if it was to stay like it is? Or do we need it to go up to cover our expenses so we don't lose money? That's the question I'd like to ask.
Mrs. Neal.
I mean, currently it's been a strange year, and we probably won't cover our service purely because of the number of licences we've issued. So we've still got our overheads; they don't go away, but the income is down, vastly down on last year. So a 2% increase is not really going to cover any loss that we make, I would imagine.
Thank you.
I've just come back. So 2% shouldn't really distract anyone or make things even more difficult for taxi businesses.
I wouldn't have thought so.
Right. Thank you very much.
Bearing in mind these fees will go out to consultation, so the trade will have their say.
Perfect.
Thank you. Councillor Garton.
Yeah, these two price indexes, consumer and retail price indexes, in both of them, they actually fell substantially below 2% over the last 12 months, while the inflationary level was at the beginning of 2020 just about 2%. We're now down to 0.3%. And looking at these figures provided to us in these tables, it seems to be some of them are just 2%, some of them are considerably less, and some of them are considerably higher. So there doesn't seem to be much consistency in it, although the increases are, on the whole scale of things, rather minor. But I do agree with Councillor Nagy that particularly the taxi trade, but also the licensing trade, the alcohol licensing trade, and also sexual entertainment venues have suffered tremendously over the last 12 months. And I think we should be, since we are looking at a bigger review in 12 months from now, I think it would be wise for us to simply freeze the fees as they are at the moment.
Thank you. I have Councillor Grigg next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do hear what you're saying, but having read the report and because of taking on board what a difficult year we've had, and also listening to what Mrs. Neal said about covering our costs, I think it would be foolish to freeze, and I think an inflationary increase is perfectly acceptable, and I would propose that we go with papers and recommend that we approve this fee level.
Thank you, Councillor Grigg. Do you have a second?
I'd like to second that.
Was that?
Yeah, Cynthia
Councillor
Robertson. I'd like to second that proposal, Madam Chairman.
Okay, I'm just looking to see who else wishes to speak. Mr. Littlemore.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to pick up on some of the concerns raised by members with regard to how our licensed trades and taxi trades are doing. I just wanted to point out, and it's worth echoing it here for public consumption as well, that there are a number of grant assistance available from government to businesses that are suffering because of the pandemic that our economic development team have been administrating. So I would really encourage members, when they're talking to people in the trade, that to make sure that they're applying for those grants for assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rose. Next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to agree with what has been said. Also, we are hopeful that the situation with COVID will resolve, and this obviously, stating the obvious, this is April this year till April next year, and I think the actual increase is very mild one, considering that some areas are much more 5% and such like. So I just wanted to agree, but I was a little bit late on doing that. But anyway, I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would just like from the chair just to say, I can see other people still wanting to come in, so I'm still noting that. Just to say, I think as Mrs. Neal spoke and said, it still will go out to consultation. And I think that's the important thing. So we're not actually, if things change, you know, we can look at it again. So I think the word that is going out to consultation is very important. I have Councillor Sams indicating. Janetta.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was really pleased to see the new national standards with the child sexual exploitation safeguarding and the gangs and county lines is now involved. I think that's a really a forward step for the council to be taken. And I know obviously it's a national standard, but I think it's very, very worthwhile and help safety even more.
Yeah. Agreed. I think it's paramount that it's there. So I agree with you totally. Right. I am now looking and I don't have anyone else indicating. So can you speak now if you would like to come in? Nobody? So we have, is that someone? No? We have a proposal from Councillor Grigg, seconded by Councillor Robertson, to agree the recommendation on page 8. I'll read it out just so you've all got it. It's that the licensing committee approve fee levels as set out in 2.8, 2.9, 2.11, 2.13, 2.15, 2.17 and 2.18 of the report for implementation on the 1st of April 2021, subject to the consideration of any representations following consultation. Now, is this one that we will have a vote on, or can I ask whether everybody approves? Ms. Parfitt.
Madam Chair, as some dissent was expressed during the debate, I would recommend a vote be taken.
Then we will. Please carry on.
Thank you. Councillor Fort.
Agreed.
Councillor Garton.
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Grigg.
Agreed.
Councillor Hinder.
Agreed.
Councillor Joy.
For.
Councillor Nagy.
Agreed.
Councillor Newton.
Agreed.
Councillor Pearl.
Agreed.
Councillor Mrs Robertson.
Agreed.
Councillor Emrose.
Agreed.
Councillor Sams.
Agreed.
And Councillor Springett.
For.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With one vote against, that is carried.
Thank you. Thank you, members. We will now move on to item 13, which is the Busking Guidelines Consultation Results 2020 on papers 20 to 37. And that is Mrs Neal coming in again. Thank you.
Okay, so this report summarises the results from the consultation that was carried out between, I think it was the 9th of September 20 and the 1st of November 20. And the full findings are attached as Appendix 1. Overall, 84.9% of those consulted were in favour of introducing guidelines, with 72% believing they were proportionate. However, there was a small number of respondents that did have some comment or suggestions to make, which are found at 2.6 of the report. Okay, the numbers in the brackets indicates the number of people that actually commented on that specific subject, and it says, you know, so for example, number 1, 5 people commented, 2 on setting performance spaces, and 3 that works over all of them. And obviously it was those 4 concerns that were raised. So currently we don't specify or fix anything in our guidelines. It's not a policy, it's guidelines. I think that's kind of what we need to make clear. And currently there is no interaction between Maidstone Council, street performance and businesses, or any kind of expectation on behaviour between people. And so, based on the fact that there were no real busking issues in Maidstone, I mean, we don't have busking issues, we have issues around specific buskers who do what they do regardless of what you've got in place. And so it was felt that, you know, a set of guidelines was the best way to go and the best place to start from, and then we work forward from there. So also, you know, busking, licensing have no real powers against buskers. The only thing you can enforce against is the nuisance they cause, not so much the busking. So that would be a licensing activity that would involve the involvement of another department, people that deal with noise nuisance and things like that. So bear in mind the comments that have been made at section 2. Recommendation is that we agree these set of guidelines to go to CHI, or the options are that we recommend it goes to CHI, or that we further investigate the matters raised with a view to incorporate all or some of them into the guidelines, but that would require further consultation, and that would make the document more prescriptive. So basically it's something to be discussed now.
Right. Thank you, Mrs Neal. Right, I have Councillor Hinder first.
Thank you, Chair. I entirely agree with what's down here, but there's one curiosity on page 23, and it also crops up on page 33, whereby it states to be heard inside buildings in the surrounding area or from the opposite side of a street. I would maintain that it's inevitable that it will be heard from the other side of a street, the opposite side of the street. So I'm wondering whether that should be still included or taken out. It's in the draft guidelines and also in number 3 on page 23.
Oh yes, I've got it. If your volume is loud enough to be heard inside buildings in the surrounding area or from the opposite side of a street, it is likely this is too loud. Yeah, I've got the bit you're talking about. Okay. Was there another one you said, or was that the 2? I know.
No, that's it crops up.
Okay, so that's the first one. I now have Councillor Sams.
Thank you. Yeah, I just think that if we've asked this consultation and we've got some detailed stuff from people, from those sort of answering the consultation, that perhaps we should look further at those matters that were raised, because in my mind, I suppose that's the point of having a consultation. And if things may be useful to look further into, then I think that may be a good idea.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The proposal to specify pitches is quite a sensible, interesting one, but of course it would need to be policed in some way, and looking at it from a practical point of view, I don't think that we'd have the staffing resources to arrange that sort of thing, although it seems sensible, a sensible idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 34 other matters, it goes into, if they're selling stuff, and then it goes on to number 35. So if they're doing CDs at the time, and they say, well, you've got to give me a voluntary donation, and then people say, well, what's the voluntary donation? And you say it's £1 a balloon or £1 a CD. Is that then classed as a donation still, or could that technically be selling? Because I tend to find that's what happens. So what's the suggested donation? I just thought that just because if I hear that one again, I can have our officer's clarification on that one. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Neal, did you want to come back?
Yeah, you can put a sign up that recommends a donation amount. However, if somebody puts in 20p and picks something up, you can't stop them. Then that's still a donation, whether you give £1 or 20p. But if you insist that it's £1, then you're selling them.
The perfect answer. Just that is clarification. Thank you very much.
Well done. Councillor Garton.
Yeah, on Councillor Hinder's point, obviously that paragraph is a little bit ambiguous, because I read it, if it can be heard inside the building, and then the stipulation which buildings in the surrounding area or the buildings opposite. So maybe we can just redraft that sentence a little bit better, because obviously, yes, you're bound to hear it from the other side of opposite side of the street, but you shouldn't hear it in a building on the opposite side of the street. I think that is the way it was meant, but since Councillor Hinder sort of raised it as an ambiguous point, I think we should just clear that up by simply rephrasing that sentence.
That makes sense to me, Councillor Garton. That was noted, Councillor Neal. Mrs. Neal?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was noted.
Thank you. Councillor Rose.
Yeah, sound level, I agree on. That is really quite. You should be able to hear it across the other side of the road, but not in the buildings. And I have this fond idea in the warmer springtime and summer that, with the situation as far as the Hazlitt, that there will be possibly people who like to perform, being able to actually come out and feel that, rather than just actually busking as we think of it as collecting money for their talent, just being able to perform their talent. It may be that it's not necessarily thinking about licensing. More possibly, another committee could be thinking about that, ERL or something like that. But I mean, I am hopeful that a brighter future. So therefore, obviously, I think it's quite important to think about pitches and also sound level, and hopefully we will have people who wish to come out and just entertain without being able to take part in anything organised at the Hazlitt. So hopefully that's my fond thought anyway. So just to sort of throw that onto the table. Okay, thank you.
That's
Chairman,
great.
could I possibly speak?
Who's this? Oh,
Councillor Newton.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see you in the. Yeah,
It's okay. I've got
Gordon.
problems with my sound here.
No, you come in next. I'm sure the others won't mind. Go for it.
Well, one of the things I think we've missed is groups of Morris dancers that come down Week Street and perform, usually at the top of Earl Street. They can be 15 of them. Are they breaking the law then, or could they be breaking the law? Mrs. Neal, to answer that one, has consideration been given to that particular aspect of busking?
Unfortunately, Morris dancers are not considered entertainment, and they are exempt.
No.
I think we've been through this before.
Yes. I have no opinion on this.
Tell them all, because
what the law says.
What are Morris dancers classed at, if I may ask?
They come under kind of traditional, cultural kind of, that kind of. I don't know what you call it. What's the expression, Robin?
Culture.
Traditional.
Yes.
Cultural dancing.
That's it. Yes, that's what they come under.
Okay. There's a specific exemption in the Licensing Act actually mentioning Morris dancers, saying they are specifically exempt and not regarded as regulated entertainment, because they lobbied hard during the formation of the legislation.
Glad to hear that.
Barbara. Thank you. Did you want to say anything else, Councillor Newton? Have we lost him?
That seems to have answered the question, but being a Morris musician, I was somewhat concerned there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chimney Sweeps will be his next one.
Yeah, it's always been my aspiration that was partly what the square was for. And it would be lovely. I can just see Morris dancers out in the summertime if we can. Sounds a wonderful idea. Right, moving on. I've got Mrs. Robertson and then Councillor Robertson, then Councillor Grigg.
Yes, Chairman. Can buskers actually use the bandstand in Brenchley Gardens, or do they have to get permission from the Borough Council? Does anyone know?
I think it's booked, but I'll let Mrs. Neal answer.
I believe that all council land has to go through economic development. Is it Laura Dixon and her team?
That's it. Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Grigg.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking personally, I really like walking up the High Street and hearing a bit of music. I think it gives it great character and vibrancy, so I like that. And I'm also not opposed to a bit of traditional culture. I quite like seeing the old Morris men, having the checkers, as I did. We have Morris men every year, and I think it brings a great feel to the area. However, I would like to just go back over on what Councillor Sams was saying about the possibility of looking into this further. I did asked myself several questions about it before I read the report, and I was pleased to see that all of those were answered within the report. And I would just like to say that it is noted here that this is a starting point, and it will be under review. So I actually feel happy and confident that we can go ahead with it as it is, knowing that if there are problems, it's going to be reviewed and those will be brought back, rather than spend the money and resourcing on further consultation at this stage.
Thank you.
Agreed.
And I have Councillor Springett.
Thank you. I think Grigg just summed it up perfectly, actually. It's the first time we've had this document. I think it's a great idea, and I think we need to approve it, get going with it, and then we'll amend it as and when necessary. So I support going ahead with it as it is, and then bringing it back if we need to make any changes.
Right. Thank you. I don't see anyone else on the IM wishing to speak. So are you happy that we now come with some recommendation? Because the
Sorry, are we talking about agreeing the document with the amendment to the ambiguous paragraph? Sorry, my dog.
Agreeing. Can you say that again? Sorry, I had a dog barking somewhere.
Sorry, yeah, it's my dog. It's been quiet for too long now.
Oh, bless. Carry on, say it again.
Is it the document with the amendment to the ambiguous paragraph about the noise within, you shouldn't be able to hear the noise within a shop?
Well, my personal view on this is that could be added. I don't have a problem with that if others are in agreement.
So I'm perfectly happy for it to go ahead like that, Mrs. Neal.
Yeah, okay, lovely, thank you.
Okay. So if I can ask for a proposer and a seconder, and I think
I'm happy to propose that, Chair.
Yeah.
Happy to second.
And Councillor Hinder seconding. So I'm looking at the papers that I've got in front of me with the recommendations on, but I realise you also said about it going to Chi.
Yes,
it's Neil, and that's not actually on here.
It's in the options.
No, I'm talking about on page 20 where it says we make the following recommendation to this committee. It's got to consider the options given at 3132 and advise accordingly, which we've done.
The purpose of the report is to basically what is it on the draft and outline the next steps to take. So the next steps were outlined at the options.
Yeah.
So one was to Chi and the other one was to further investigate. So we've discussed the options and we've decided to go with. So the recommendation is that it goes to
3.1.
Yes.
Got it. 3.1 to the Chief Committee agrees the proposed draft voluntary busking guidelines as attached to Appendix 2. Yes. Now, I don't know how we want to go with this vote, whether you need...
Could I just ask quickly, why would we want to send it to Chi?
Because that's what we do.
That's what we do. They confirm everything we do.
I think it's because of the department that licensing or the director of licensing comes under now.
It's the Constitution requires a policy is approved by Chi Committee. So this committee doesn't have the delegated authority to approve some certain policies or guidance such as this. Thank you.
And I've got Mr. Harris wishing to come in. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say in relation to it going to Chi, obviously because the enforcement of this isn't via licensing, it is via environmental health officers. I think it's appropriate that committee also gets to comment on it.
Yeah.
Just as a further point, not disagreeing with anything that's been said previously.
No, thank you. Okay with that, Councillor Nagy. Cleared for you?
Yes, very clear.
Good, thank you. So going back, Ms. Parfitt, can you tell me whether we need to vote individually or can we just all agree? If everyone's in agreement, of course.
If all members are in agreement and there's no dissent, it can be agreed without a vote. But can I just ask a question, Madam Chair, beforehand? I note that obviously the members have agreed to take into consideration that the comment previously raised in one of the paragraphs that be amended. Can I just, for clarification, is that amendment, is that actually as an amendment to recommendation 3.1 or
Yes.
point 3.1 rather?
Councillor Hinder, that was your point, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, from my viewpoint, if it could be included or added on to the recommendation on 3.1, I would be happy with that.
Councillor Grigg, is that appropriate with you, given that you proposed?
Absolutely fine.
You're fine
Thank
with
you.
that?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to clarify.
Right, I now got Councillor Garton.
Yeah, just one small thing. I mean, in the responses, somebody mentioned, responses to the consultation, somebody mentioned about Brenchley Gardens, and we should encourage buskers there. Could we take that suggestion forward to Chi as well as part of us passing it on to Chi as an informal, informal note? And there was a question earlier whether people need to be licensed, particularly to play on the bandstand, which appears to me a little bit of unnecessary red tape if that would be the case. So maybe she can elaborate on that point at their own peril.
Wouldn't that have to go to economic development, though?
That's exactly where I'm just coming in to say. I think it would probably be Earl that deal with that.
It's all Maidstone Borough Council land, surely.
Yes, yeah, but it wouldn't be Chi, it would be L. But I'm happy for an officer to come in and just clarify that for Councillor Garton.
Yes, you are correct, Madam Chairman. It would go to L rather than Chi committee.
So are you saying, Councillor Garton, that you would like that to be a recommendation that it goes to Earl?
Yeah, if formally we have to do that, yes. I mean, I was rather hoping we could just attach a little minute and for the officer to put that in a report. But if we have to take it to Earl, then we may just officially take it to Earl from this committee as a suggestion. If
I think Councillor Garton was just meaning the bandstand. Am I right?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah. Which
Yes,
I think trying to itemise the bandstand with all council land would be the problem.
Right. Mr. Littlemore?
Yes, that's correct. It would just be a reference from the licensing committee to L committee to consider that point. Thank you.
Right. So, are you happy with that, Councillor Garton, then? That will happen?
Yeah, fine. I just thought it was a lovely idea and we should grab a good idea when we see one.
Absolutely. Yeah, good. Okay, so if everyone is in agreement and I don't hear anything, then we will take that as unanimous. If not, we'll ask Ms. Parfitt to take a vote or take the vote for us. Oh, I've got Olivia coming. Olivia, Ms. Parfitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, as it was proposed and seconded by Councillors Grigg and Hinder, if they were happy to accept that amendment, that a reference also be sent to the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee also.
Good point. Councillor Grigg, are you approving?
I'm not going to stand in and die in a ditch over it. I personally don't. I believe in the strategies rather than individual sites. But if that's what the committee want to go ahead, I'm certainly not going to say no. So happy if that's what the committee want.
Okay. And
could I just come back on that, Chairman? Because obviously,
just a second. Just a second. Right. Let's just clear up this first because Mrs. Grigg has just said she agrees. Now I'm going to ask Councillor Hinder.
I agree.
You agree, right? Now, Councillor Nagy, if you'd like to come back.
Yeah, I'm just going through my head. Say we did make it exempt to you could go busking in the bandstand, and it attracted a crowd, and it was a big crowd. Are we? I just think it could be out of control if we make it for any buskers. If you see what I mean, I've just got in my mind we could be setting us up to have trouble in Brenchley Gardens if do you see what I mean?
Yeah, but it can only be used. It can only be used if it's pre-booked, and that's
fair enough.
Go through.
And just to add, Madam Chairman, if I may, that would be one of the considerations that Earl Committee would consider as part of receiving a referral, and no doubt the Community Protection Team and others, as part of reviewing the report, would add in those concerns that you've raised.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I don't have anyone else asking any questions. So if we are all in agreement with the recommendation proposed by Councillor Grigg, seconded by Councillor Hinder, and I hear no dissent, I will take that as a unanimous decision. And I hear nothing, Miss Parfitt. So we'll take that as agreed. Yes? Right. And moving on. Oh, that was the last one.
It's all over.
We've already done the other one. So well done, everybody. And I didn't even get a chance, even though Miss Spanborough spoke. It was lovely to have you with us, Sharon.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got very restricted access, audio only, and no way of flagging up if I wanted to say anything. But so that's why I apologise for putting in, because it was the only way I could.
Right.
She's on the phone.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. So that I've just got messages. No, it's okay. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, and thanks to officers, as Councillor Grigg has just done, and say have a lovely evening, because it's not as late as some of the meetings have been, so enjoy.
Can I just add one comment? Yeah, I will pass on members' best wishes to Councillor Brindle in the morning. Thank you.
Get well soon.
Thanks, Bob.
Happy New Year, all.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers and bye, everyone.
Bye bye
Well
now.
done, Denise.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye.